The emergency beacon flashed red across the metal walls of Research Station Delta 7, casting eerie shadows in the otherwise dim corridor. James Miller adjusted his environment suit and checked the oxygen levels one more time. Something had triggered the station's outer perimeter sensors, and as the only xenobiologist on duty during the night cycle, he had to investigate. Life signs detected in Sector 4, the station's AI announced in its monotone voice. Caution advised. Unknown biological signature. James moved carefully through the airlock, his boots crunching against the purple-tinted snow of this frontier world. The 3 moons overhead provided enough light to see without using his helmet lamp. His handheld scanner pointed him toward a small valley about half a kilometer from the station. The wind howled around him, carrying ice crystals that pinged against his visor. As he approached the valley, his scanner's readings grew stronger. Whatever was out there, it was big, easily larger than an Earth bear. He switched to thermal imaging and froze. There, partially hidden behind a rock formation, lay a massive creature. Its body temperature was dropping rapidly in the planet's frigid atmosphere. It was injured. James's heart nearly stopped when he got close enough to see it clearly. The creature matched every description he'd ever read about the legendary shadow hunters, the apex predators that even space pirates avoided. Its sleek, armored body was covered in overlapping plates that seemed to absorb light. 2 pairs of powerful limbs ended in retractable claws that could tear through spacecraft hull plating. A long, whip-like tail lay motionless in the snow. But what caught his attention most were its eyes. 6 of them, arranged in a circular pattern around its elongated head. They glowed with an inner intelligence that no mere animal should possess. The creature was conscious and watching him. Protocol was clear about shadow hunters. Eliminate on sight. They were considered too dangerous to study, too lethal to capture, and too intelligent to risk contact with. Every known encounter with their species had ended in bloodshed. The creature made a clicking sound, followed by a weak electromagnetic pulse that made James's instruments flicker. It was trying to communicate. "You're hurt," James said aloud, knowing the creature couldn't understand him. He could see a deep gash along its side, probably from some kind of energy weapon. Someone had tried to kill it. The shadow hunter's eyes focused on him more intently. It made no aggressive moves, despite James being well within striking distance. Either it was too weak to attack, or it was choosing not to. James keyed his communicator. "Station, this is Miller. I've found the source of the alert. It's..." He hesitated, looking at those intelligent eyes again. "It's an injured large predator. I'm bringing it in for medical treatment." "Negative. Researcher Miller," the AI responded. "Station protocols forbid." James shut off his communicator. He knew he was probably signing his own death warrant, but something deep inside told him this was the right thing to do. He pulled out his medical scanner and slowly approached the creature. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "Please don't eat me." The shadow hunter watched as he began scanning its wound. To his amazement, it shifted slightly to give him better access to the injured area. The movement revealed something else, a small device attached to its armor plating. Some kind of tracker. James carefully removed the device and crushed it under his boot. The creature's eyes followed his every move, and he could have sworn he saw understanding in them. "Let's get you somewhere warm," James said, pulling out his emergency medical kit. "I'm going to give you something for the pain first." As he administered the painkiller, the shadow hunter remained perfectly still. Its electromagnetic pulses had changed frequency, becoming almost gentle. James had studied enough xenobiology to know that this was completely unprecedented behavior for their species. He called for a cargo transport from the station, knowing he'd have to act fast before anyone realized exactly what kind of creature he was bringing in. As he waited, the shadow hunter's tail moved slowly through the snow, creating a pattern. James stared in disbelief. It was drawing a rough but recognizable diagram of the solar system they were in. "Well," James muttered to himself, This is either the best or worst decision of my life. The cargo transport appeared on the horizon, and James prepared himself for what would undoubtedly be a very interesting explanation to his superiors. The medical bay's doors slid shut with a heavy thud as James activated the emergency lockdown. Outside, he could hear the station's security team assembling. They had discovered what he'd brought inside, and they weren't happy about it. "Miller," Captain Rogers' voice boomed through the intercom. "Open these doors immediately. Do you have any idea what you've done?" James glanced at the shadow hunter lying on the reinforced examination table. He had managed to clean and treat most of its wound before the alarm was raised. The creature remained surprisingly calm, its 6 eyes tracking his movements with evident curiosity. "Sir," James replied to the intercom, "this creature is intelligent. It hasn't shown any aggression. We can't just kill it because we're afraid. That thing has destroyed entire space stations. It's literally classified as a Class 1 threat by the Galactic Council. Open these doors, or I'll have them cut open." The shadow hunter made a series of clicking sounds, followed by electromagnetic pulses that made the medical equipment flicker. James noticed it was trying to mimic the pattern of human speech, matching the pauses and rhythms of their conversation. "Captain," James said firmly, "if it wanted to kill us, it would have done so already. It's trying to communicate." He heard muffled discussions outside, followed by the distinct sound of plasma cutters being prepared. James quickly gathered more medical supplies, knowing he had maybe 20 minutes before they broke through. The creature suddenly lifted its head and pointed one clawed limb toward the medical bay's computer terminal. James hesitated only briefly before wheeling a display screen closer. The shadow hunter immediately began tapping the screen with precise movements. James's jaw dropped as mathematical equations began appearing on the screen. Not random patterns, actual complex calculations describing orbital mechanics. "Captain," James called out excitedly, "you need to see this. It's doing advanced mathematics. This proves it's not just some mindless predator. Mathematics won't matter when it tears you apart, Miller. This is your last warning." The shadow hunter stopped its calculations and turned its attention to the doors. Its armor plates shifted, seeming to absorb even more light, making it nearly invisible against the dark medical bay walls. Only its glowing eyes remained clearly visible. James moved between the creature and the doors. "I won't let them hurt you," he said, surprised by his own determination. The shadow hunter responded with a gentle electromagnetic pulse that made James's skin tingle, almost like a thank you. The plasma cutters began their work on the doors, sending sparks flying into the room. James quickly transmitted the creature's mathematical calculations to his personal datapad. If nothing else, he wanted proof that he wasn't crazy for trying to protect it. Suddenly, the station's lights flickered and died, plunging everything into darkness. The emergency generators kicked in, casting a red glow throughout the medical bay. The shadow hunter had moved, but not to attack. It was now crouched protectively near James, its tail creating a barrier between him and the doors. "Miller," Captain Rogers shouted, "our systems are going haywire. What's it doing?" James watched in amazement as more electromagnetic pulses from the creature interfered with the station's electronics. It wasn't random interference. The pulses were structured, purposeful. The shadow hunter was hacking the station systems. "It's protecting us," James replied, realizing the truth. "Captain, please, just give me 1 hour to prove this creature isn't what we think it is. 1 hour, or you can court-martial me afterward." There was a long pause before the captain responded. 1 hour, Miller. But if that thing so much as twitches wrong, we're coming in with heavy weapons." The plasma cutters stopped. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The shadow hunter's eyes dimmed slightly. Apparently, it too was relieving tension. "Thank you," James said to both the captain and the creature. He pulled up a chair next to the examination table. "Now let's figure out how to talk to each other before they change their minds." The shadow hunter responded by drawing more equations on the screen, this time including simple pictographs. James smiled as he recognized what it was doing, creating a basic translation key. "You know," he said, watching the creature work, "for the galaxy's most lethal predator, you're pretty good at solving problems without violence." The shadow hunter's electromagnetic pulse pattern almost sounded like laughter. The next 12 hours in the medical bay proved to be the most fascinating of James's scientific career. The shadow hunter, which he had started calling Hunter for simplicity's sake, was rapidly developing ways to communicate through the station's computer systems. "Look at this," James muttered to himself, watching as Hunter manipulated electromagnetic fields to create three-dimensional holograms in the air. The creature was showing him star maps, including routes that no human ship had ever mapped. Hunter had already mastered the station's basic input systems, using them to explain that its species didn't communicate through sound, but through a complex combination of electromagnetic pulses and light patterns. The clicking sounds it made were merely a courtesy attempt at mimicking human speech. "So your entire language is based on energy patterns?" James asked, fascinated. Hunter responded by creating a holographic display showing how its species' neural networks naturally generated and interpreted these patterns. It was like watching living computers communicate. The station's security team had maintained their guard outside, but even they had grown curious about the ongoing exchange. Several of them had started watching through the medical bay's windows, their weapons lowered but still ready. "This is remarkable," James said, recording everything on his datapad. "Your species doesn't just hunt. You explore, you learn, you." He paused as Hunter created a new hologram, showing a massive structure floating in space. "Is that your homeworld?" Hunter's response came as a series of complex patterns that the computer now partially translated. "Was. Gone now. Others feared. Destroyed." James felt a deep sadness in those simple words. "They attacked your people because they were afraid of you." The hologram changed, showing scenes of battle. Shadow hunters defending themselves against massive fleets, using their natural abilities to disable ships rather than destroy them. But they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "You weren't the aggressors," James realized. "You were defending yourselves." Hunter's 6 eyes dimmed slightly. A gesture James had learned meant agreement tinged with sadness. The creature shifted on the examination table, its wound already showing remarkable healing thanks to its advanced biology. "How many of your kind are left?" James asked. The answer came in the form of a simple mathematical equation. Less than 100, scattered across the galaxy. James sat back in his chair, processing this information. One of the most advanced species in known space had been nearly wiped out because of fear and misunderstanding. It was a painfully familiar story, even on Earth. Hunter suddenly perked up, its armor plates shifting to create intricate patterns of absorbed and reflected light. The computer translated, "You different. You helped. Why?" James thought about it for a moment. "On Earth, my homeworld, we have a long history of learning to understand creatures that others feared. Some of our closest animal companions were once considered dangerous predators. We learned that intelligence and strength don't have to mean threat." The creature processed this, its electromagnetic pulses creating complex patterns that the computer struggled to translate. Finally, it managed. "Humans unique, see past fear, want learn more." "I want to learn more too," James replied. He hesitated, then asked, "Would you be willing to help me show others that your species isn't what they think? That you're not just predators, but explorers and scholars?" Hunter's response was interrupted by Captain Rogers' voice over the intercom. "Miller, your hour was up a long time ago. But we've been watching. I've contacted Galactic Command with your findings. They're interested." James looked at Hunter, who was already creating a new hologram. This one showing humans and shadow hunters working together, exploring the stars. It was an optimistic vision of the future, one that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about both species. "Your wound is almost healed," James said to Hunter. "Want to help me change some minds?" Hunter's response came not through the computer, but through a careful extension of one of its clawed limbs toward James, a gesture of trust that would have been unthinkable just days ago. James took the offered claw carefully, feeling the powerful muscles that could tear through metal instead being used for a gentle handshake. Sometimes, James thought, the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a predator's claws or teeth, but the fear that prevented understanding. And sometimes, the bravest thing wasn't fighting monsters, but taking the time to realize they weren't monsters at all. The peaceful progress James and Hunter had made came crashing down with the arrival of the military cruiser Vigilant in orbit around the research station. Its commander didn't share Captain Rogers' newfound openness to understanding the Shadowhunter species. "This is Commander Walsh of the Galactic Defense Force," a stern voice announced through the station's communications. "We are here to contain and eliminate the Class 1 threat. All station personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately." James watched as Hunter's electromagnetic patterns shifted rapidly, displaying agitation. The creature's holographic interface showed multiple ships moving into attack positions around the station. "They're not here to study you," James said grimly. "They're here to finish what they started." Hunter's response appeared on the screen. "Not first time. Always hunt. Never listen." Captain Rogers burst into the medical bay, his face pale. "Miller, you need to get out of here. They're going to purge the entire station with plasma if they have to." "We won't let that happen," James replied, already downloading his research data. "Hunter, can you interface with the station's systems like you did before?" The Shadowhunter's armor plates rippled in acknowledgement. Within seconds, the station's lights began flickering as Hunter took control of the basic systems. "What are you doing?" Captain Rogers demanded. "Giving them a chance to learn," James said, watching as Hunter created a station-wide broadcast. Holograms appeared in every room, showing the truth about the Shadowhunters, their civilization, their knowledge, their peaceful attempts at contact. Commander Walsh's voice cut through again, angry now. "This is your final warning. Release control of the station's systems, or we will open fire." Hunter's message appeared on all screens. Always violence. Never understanding. Like before. James felt the station shudder as the first warning shots struck their shields. He looked at Hunter, seeing determination in those 6 glowing eyes. "We need to get to my research vessel," James said quickly. "It's small enough to slip past their blockade." Captain Rogers caught his arm. "Miller, this is insane. That ship can barely hold 2 humans, let alone that." Hunter created a new hologram, showing how its body could compress and shift its mass, adapting to small spaces. It was an ability that had once made its species feared. Now it might save their lives. "Captain," James said firmly, "you've seen the truth. Will you help us?" Rogers looked between James and Hunter, then at the data showing the military ships preparing for another attack. Finally, he nodded. "I'll create a distraction," Rogers said. "Get to docking bay 3. And Miller, good luck." The next few minutes were chaos, as Rogers initiated an emergency protocol that sent multiple decoy signals to the military ships. James and Hunter raced through the station's corridors. Hunter moved with incredible grace despite its size, its body flowing like liquid shadow. They reached the docking bay just as the first real shots hit the station. James's small research vessel sat ready, its systems already warming up thanks to Hunter's electromagnetic control. "Can you fit?" James asked, watching as Hunter examined the ship's cargo hold. In response, the Shadowhunter's body began to shift and compress, its armor plates sliding over each other like a puzzle rearranging itself. Within moments, the massive creature had condensed itself to less than a third of its original size. "That's incredible," James breathed, scrambling into the pilot's seat. "Hold on tight. This might get rough." As they detached from the station, James saw the military ships turning to track them. But Hunter was already interfacing with their vessel's systems, creating false signals and sensor ghosts that confused their targeting systems. "Where should we go?" James asked, pushing the engines to their limit as they broke free of the planet's atmosphere. Hunter's response appeared on the ship's main screen, showing coordinates far outside known space. Others there. Hidden. Safe. James programmed the course, watching as the military ships grew smaller behind them. "They'll hunt us," he warned. Hunter's reply was simple but determined. "Together. Stronger. We'll understand." As their small ship jumped to faster than light speed, James realized that they had just become part of something bigger than themselves. This wasn't just about saving one creature anymore. It was about challenging the galaxy's deepest fears and prejudices. And somewhere out there, others of Hunter's kind were waiting, hoping that someone would finally listen instead of fear. 3 days into their escape, James's small research vessel pushed through the dense asteroid field that marked the border of known space. Behind them, 2 military pursuit craft stubbornly maintained their chase, despite Hunter's best efforts to throw them off with false sensor readings. "They're persistent," James muttered, maneuvering between 2 massive rocks. "We can't keep this up forever. Our fuel reserves are getting low." Hunter, still compressed into its smaller form in the cargo hold, sent electromagnetic pulses to the ship's computer. "Trust. Plan forming." James had learned to trust those words. Over the past few days, he'd watched Hunter save them multiple times, predicting attacks before they came, finding safe routes through dangerous space, and even repairing their ship's damaged systems using its understanding of energy fields. A warning light flashed on the console. One of the pursuit ships had launched a targeting probe. "They're done playing chase," James said, watching the probe close in. "Any ideas?" Hunter's response came through action rather than words. The creature's body began emitting complex electromagnetic patterns that interfaced with their ship's systems. Suddenly, their small vessel's energy signature changed completely, making them appear as nothing more than another asteroid. The probe shot past them, confused by the deception. James held his breath, keeping their ship as motionless as possible among the actual asteroids. Then something massive moved in the darkness ahead of them. "Hunter," James whispered, "please tell me that's not what I think it is." The shadow hunter's patterns showed excitement rather than fear. The shape moved again, and James realized they were looking at a space-dwelling predator, one of the legendary void whales that haunted the asteroid fields. Before James could react, Hunter had already begun broadcasting new patterns into space, not hiding this time, but communicating. The void whale responded, its massive form shifting through different bioluminescent patterns. "You can talk to them?" James asked in amazement. Hunter's reply appeared on screen. "All predators understand. Watch." The void whale suddenly moved with surprising speed, its enormous body curving through the asteroid field toward the pursuing military ships. They immediately broke off their chase, retreating from the much greater threat. "That's incredible," James said, watching the massive creature create a barrier between them and their pursuers. "How did you know it would help?" "Not help," Hunter explained through text. "Hunting territory. We ask permission. They don't. Simple." James laughed despite their situation. It was such a basic concept. Respect for another predator's territory. But the military ships had never considered it. They had charged in, assuming their technology made them superior. The void whale drew closer to their ship, its patterns changing to what James assumed was curiosity. Hunter responded with more electromagnetic pulses, and their small vessel was suddenly bathed in soft bioluminescence. "What's happening?" "Safe passage," Hunter explained. "Old agreement between species. Respect territories. Share knowledge." James watched in awe as more void whales emerged from the asteroid field, creating a living corridor through their hunting grounds. It was a display of trust and cooperation between species that most humans would have thought impossible. "You're full of surprises," James said to Hunter. "Is this how your people survived? Making allies instead of enemies?" Hunter's response was thoughtful. "Survival not about being strongest, about being smartest, understanding others, like you did with me." As they followed the path laid out by the void whales, James reflected on how much his own understanding had grown. He'd been taught that the galaxy was full of threats to be eliminated. Instead, he was learning that it was full of intelligences to be understood. "How much further to your hidden colony?" he asked. Hunter created a star map, showing their position relative to their destination. "Close now. But first, more friends to meet. More friends like the void whales." "Different," Hunter replied. "Each species unique, each valuable, each misunderstood." James smiled, realizing that he was being given a chance to see the galaxy as the shadow hunters saw it, not as a place of threats and competition, but as a vast network of potential allies and shared knowledge. Behind them, the void whales continued their patrol, protecting not just their territory, but the possibility of understanding between species. It was a lesson the pursuing ships would hopefully learn from. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in space wasn't a predator, but a closed mind. The revelation came in the silence of deep space, as James and Hunter's ship drifted in the shadow of an ancient space station. The structure was massive but dark, appearing abandoned to casual observers. However, Hunter's electromagnetic pulses had awakened something within it. "This was one of our research centers," Hunter explained through the ship's computer. "Before the purge. Contains truth." As they docked, James noticed strange markings along the station's hull, not damage from weapons, but deliberate patterns that seemed to absorb and redirect energy, the same technology that made shadow hunters nearly invisible. "Why bring me here?" James asked as they entered the station's main chamber. Hunter had returned to its full size, its armor plates reflecting the emergency lights they'd activated. The answer came as the chamber's ancient systems hummed to life. Holograms filled the space around them, showing scenes from the past. James watched in awe as the history of the shadow hunters unfolded. "We were not always hunters," Hunter explained as the images played. "We were builders, teachers, first to discover quantum communication." The hologram showed shadow hunters teaching other species, sharing their knowledge of energy manipulation and space travel. But then the images changed, showing a darker turn. "Other predator species came to us," Hunter continued, "wanted to learn. We taught them balance, control, showed them better way than violence." James began to understand. "You were helping them evolve, like humanity did with wolves and other predators on Earth." "Yes, but some feared this. Feared united predator species. Feared change." The next images showed the beginning of the purge, massive fleets attacking shadow hunter worlds, not out of self-defense, but out of calculated fear of what might happen if predator species learned to work together. "Your crime wasn't being dangerous," James said slowly. "It was teaching others not to be dangerous." Hunter's electromagnetic patterns showed strong emotion, easier to fear than understand, easier to destroy than learn. But the final images revealed something else. Shadow hunters helping their student species escape, sacrificing themselves to protect the knowledge they had shared. Some of those species had survived, hidden away in the darkness between stars. "That's why you let me help you," James realized. "You saw the same potential in humans. We learned to work with creatures others fear." Hunter created a new hologram, showing Earth's history of animal domestication alongside the shadow hunters' work with other species. The parallels were striking. "Humans unique," Hunter explained. "Already know the way. Could help others understand. Could finish what we started." James walked through the holograms, watching the intertwined histories. "That's why the military is so afraid. You're not trying to create an army of predators. You're trying to create understanding between all species. Yes, knowledge here proves truth, shows purpose." Hunter moved to a central console, its claws gently interfacing with the ancient technology. "Will you help share?" James thought about everything he'd seen. The void whales, the hidden history, the true mission of the shadow hunters. It wasn't just about saving one species anymore. It was about changing how all species saw each other. "What do you need me to do?" Hunter's response came with both text and a complex electromagnetic pattern that made James's skin tingle with its intensity. Be bridge. Show others. Humans understand both sides. Fear and friendship. Can teach what we taught. The station's systems began copying their records to James's ship's computer, proof of everything the shadow hunters had tried to accomplish. It wasn't just scientific data. It was a philosophy of cooperation that could change the galaxy. They'll try to stop us, James warned. The same fears that caused the purge still exist. Hunter's reply was accompanied by a pattern that James had learned meant hope. Fear exists because no understanding. Understanding exists because people like you choose to learn. Choose to trust. Together, they watched the final holograms fade. Images of different species learning from each other, growing beyond their natural rivalries. It was a vision of what could be, if enough people chose understanding over fear. We should get moving, James said finally. There are others who need to see this. Hunter agreed, its electromagnetic patterns already reaching out to contact those who had been waiting, hidden, for someone to finally understand the truth. 1 year after their discovery of the ancient research station, James stood before the Galactic Council, with Hunter by his side. The chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom had once voted to hunt the shadow hunters to extinction. What we present today, James announced, his voice steady, isn't just the story of one misunderstood species. It's evidence of how fear can blind us to opportunities for growth. Hunter created a gentle electromagnetic display, showing the successful results of their past year's work. On dozens of worlds, carefully chosen human xenobiologists had begun working with surviving shadow hunters, recreating their ancient role as teachers of cooperation. In just 1 year, James continued, we've seen 3 previously hostile predator species begin peaceful trading relationships. 15 space-dwelling creatures, like the void whales, have established protected travel corridors. And most importantly, we've discovered that the shadow hunters weren't eliminated. They were waiting for someone to understand. The chamber's screens lit up with images from a hidden solar system, where James and Hunter had found the surviving shadow hunter colony. Nearly 300 of them had preserved their knowledge, watching and waiting for the galaxy to be ready for what they had to teach. My colleague, James gestured to Hunter, represents a species that chose education over domination, understanding over conflict. They could have used their abilities to rule through fear. Instead, they chose to teach others to move beyond fear. Hunter stepped forward, its electromagnetic patterns translating smoothly through the chamber's new communication systems. The universal translators converted its message for all present. We offer again what we offered before. Not conquest, not dominion. Knowledge, understanding, choice. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives still showed fear, but others were clearly intrigued. The evidence was undeniable. Wherever shadow hunters and humans had worked together over the past year, ancient conflicts had begun to resolve themselves. The choice is yours, James said to the council. We can continue to fear what we don't understand, or we can learn from those who mastered their predatory nature and chose to teach others to do the same. A senior council member stood. And if we refuse, if we choose to see this as a threat? Hunter's response was calm. Then we return to darkness. Wait longer, but others now know truth. Humans know. Knowledge cannot be unknown. James smiled at his friend's wisdom. We're not asking for forgiveness or even acceptance. We're offering you the same choice humanity faced throughout its history. To fear the powerful, or to learn from them. To run from predators, or to understand them. To choose violence, or to choose growth. The chamber grew quiet as the implications became clear. The shadow hunters had never been planning conquest. They had been selecting students, species by species, teaching them to move beyond their basic instincts. Humanity had proven itself ready by doing exactly that, independently, on their own world. The vote will take place tomorrow, the council leader announced. But for now, We would hear more about these successes you've mentioned. As James and Hunter spent the next hours sharing their experiences, more and more council members moved closer, their fear gradually being replaced by curiosity. It was happening again, just as it had with James in that medical bay a year ago. Understanding was replacing fear, one mind at a time. Later, as they left the chamber, Hunter created a private message for James. They will choose correctly. Fear temporary, knowledge permanent. How can you be so sure? James asked. Because you chose correctly. Others will follow. Always do. Matter of time. James looked at his friend, remembering how terrified he had been when they first met. Now he couldn't imagine the galaxy without the Shadow Hunter's wisdom. Ready to go teach some more predators how to make friends? He asked. Hunter's electromagnetic pattern shifted to what James now recognized as amusement. Already teaching. You were first student. Now teacher too. Together, they headed toward their ship, ready to continue their work. The galaxy was vast, but understanding was spreading. Species by species, fear was being replaced by knowledge, and ancient enemies were learning what humanity and the Shadow Hunters had discovered separately, that the greatest power wasn't in dominating others, but in teaching them to be better than their instincts. It was, truly, a new beginning.